Today is Wednesday, April 20th. We'll tell you how Russia is making some gains in eastern Ukraine and how much the war could impact the global economy. Also, some extra help for millions of people with federal student loans, and more rules are changing where you do and don't need a mask now. Plus, the early results from a redesigned COVID-19 vaccine. Netflix is thinking of new ways to lure back subscribers, and people are celebrating an unofficial marijuana holiday with or without actual weed. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Authorities are scrambling to help civilians in eastern Ukraine get to safety. They're leading evacuation efforts as Russia is making new gains in the eastern region. Already, Russia seized the city of Kreminna and 2 other villages. Ukrainian troops were forced out, but are said to be keeping up the fight from the outside. Now there are fears larger population centers could be next after a lot more violence. Ukraine's president says residential areas are being targeted just as much as military sites. So civilians are clearing out while they still can. Officials have warned if they don't leave now, they could end up being trapped the way thousands of people have been in southern Ukraine. The United Nations says now nearly 5 million Ukrainians have fled their home country since the Russian invasion began. President Biden spoke with other world leaders again yesterday. They apparently talked about sending Ukraine more ammunition and punishing Russia with more sanctions. To be continued. Well, the war in Ukraine is already taking a hit on the global economy, and the fallout is expected to continue for a while. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, downgraded its outlook for the world economy, not just for this year, but for next year, too. And yes, it blamed Russia's invasion since it's impacting global trade, pushing up oil prices, threatening food supplies, and more. All as the world is still working on recovering from the pandemic. Back in January, the IMF said it expected the global economy to grow by 4.4% this year. Now it thinks the growth will slow down to about 3.6%. And that's just for the world as a whole. Things are looking worse for Russia and Ukraine. The IMF expects Russia's economy to shrink by 8.5% this year, and Ukraine's by 35%. Of course, all of this is still uncertain since it's not clear how long this war will last and if there will be any more large COVID-19 outbreaks leading to more lockdowns. Stay tuned. The U.S. government is helping millions more Americans pay off their student loans, and there are a few different ways this is happening. First, the Education Department says 40,000 people will have their debt canceled right away. Those are people who work as qualifying government employees. On top of that, the federal agency offered at least 3 years of extra credit to bring 3.6 million people closer to paying off their debt. That's nearly 10% of Americans who have outstanding student loans right now. They'll qualify for what's known as income-driven payment plans. So basically, they only make borrowers pay a certain percentage of their income on those loans for 20 to 25 years. And after that, the rest of their balance will be forgiven. The program has actually existed since the 1990s, but the White House says now some people who have been denied in the past will be able to qualify. This is something both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have been pushing for. Democrats say it'll help people with low incomes fully participate in the economy, although somewhat more debt completely canceled. While Republicans say they prefer this to other ideas, like more pauses on loan repayments or more debt cancellation. Remember, this all comes after the White House just gave people even more time to pay off their federal student loans. Those payments have been suspended since March of 2020 in response to the pandemic. Mask rules are dropping left and right ever since a federal judge this week struck down the national mandate for planes, buses, trains, and more. For example, ride-hailing giants Uber and Lyft both did away with their mask requirements for both drivers and passengers. Public transit systems in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, Washington, and Philadelphia decided to do the same. And remember, the nation's largest airlines and the Amtrak rail system dropped their mask rules already. In fact, there were some reports that airlines announced the change mid-flight for travelers as soon as the judge's ruling came down. But you may not want to throw out your mask just yet. There are still some places you'll need them. Some public transit systems announced they're choosing to keep the mandate, like in New York, San Francisco, Portland, and Milwaukee. You'll also have to keep wearing masks in New York City's 2 airports, LaGuardia and JFK, and at the airport just outside Washington, D.C., the Dulles International Airport. Bottom line, reactions are very mixed at this point. So what do public health experts say about all of this? Well, most are still encouraging people to wear their masks on public transit, whether they're required or not. Many say large crowds of people huddled together for a long period of time could make it easier for COVID-19 to spread. Either way, it seems the nationwide mandate is gone for at least a while. The Justice Department says it has no plans to appeal the judge's ruling, unless the CDC decides the mandate is still absolutely necessary for public health. Stay tuned. All right, we have more news coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Stress is just a part of life, but it can quickly get out of control. I know for me, when I feel overwhelmed with things at both work and at home, and maybe I'm also not getting as much sleep as I would like, well, that kind of stress is just not sustainable, and it can lead to even less sleep and more teeth grinding and headaches. Yep, stress can show up physically, too. So I found ways to manage my stress better with things like short meditations, getting outside, spending time with friends, and talking with a therapist can help too. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy. Give it a try and see if online therapy can help lower your stress. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the Newsworthy listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BETTERHELP, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. There could be a new version of the COVID-19 booster shot coming. Drug maker Moderna tested a so-called bivalent vaccine, which not only targets the original variant of COVID-19, but also the beta variant. Now, Moderna says the preliminary results from its study found the redesigned booster offers stronger, longer-lasting protection against variants of the virus than the original vaccine. Independent scientists still need to review this study, though, and already there are some mixed reviews from outside experts. And of course, the FDA has not weighed in yet or authorized this either. Meanwhile, another bivalent vaccine is in the works. Moderna is also testing a booster that specifically targets the Omicron variant and expects to have those early results later this spring. For the first time in more than a decade, Netflix lost subscribers. The company was down 200,000 subscribers overall in the first 3 months of this year. And the company says it'll likely lose a couple million more in the coming months. Why? In a letter to shareholders, Netflix blamed several reasons, from password sharing among users and more competition to inflation and the war in Ukraine since Netflix shut down its service in Russia. Whatever the reasons, the drop sent the company's stock down about 25% yesterday. Now it seems Netflix executives may be willing to try some new things they've dismissed in the past in the hopes of growing again, like offering an ad-supported option. So it would be free to you, but you'd have to sit through some commercials. And it could also mean Netflix will continue its plans to crack down on password sharing. Keep in mind, though, at least for now, Netflix still has the largest number of subscribers compared to all the other streaming services, with nearly 222 million people paying to tune in. It's a once-in-a-decade report, and in it, a panel of scientists put out their next big recommendation: to prioritize a mission to the planet Uranus. The U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine cannot require NASA or other space agencies to do anything, but it does often influence future space missions and how much funding they get from the federal government. As a reminder from 4th grade science class, Uranus is very cold and windy and considered an ice giant. It's the 3rd largest planet in our solar system and is the 7th planet from the sun. It takes 84 years to revolve around the sun once. Well, researchers think a more in-depth study of the planet could help better understand giant icy worlds both in our solar system and beyond, especially as other similarly sized objects are being found around other stars. It's the day many marijuana enthusiasts look forward to all year long. April 20th, or 420 as it's called, has become a sort of unofficial holiday meant to celebrate cannabis. Why April 20th? Well, there are a few possible explanations. One common theory is it came out of a ritual started by a group of California high school students in the 1970s. Apparently, they met every day at 4:20 p.m. to smoke weed. And from there, the ritual spread. Whether you're a fan of the day or not, 420 is celebrated in more ways than just by getting high. Some people, for example, are rallying for pro-marijuana legislation. Others are going to 420-themed festivals that include live music, art, food, and more. And some national chains are rolling out deals and discounts, even in places where it's not legal and still very much controversial. For example, you can get $4 off your order of at least $20 at TGI Fridays if you order through Uber Eats. Topper's Pizza is offering half off Topper sticks all day today. And Wingstop actually came out with a 420-inspired flavor. Well, that's it for the main news today. So now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a message from our sponsor. Style or comfort? How do you choose? Well, we no longer have to, thanks to Tommy John's new loungewear. Seriously, these fabrics are super soft and cozy and always feel high quality and seem to hang on my body just right. I appreciate that Tommy John loungewear features tagless labels because you can't be comfy when a tag is scratching you. And when you're getting that level of thought and detail put into comfort, you know you are in good hands. My husband knows it too. He's really picky about his comfort level, and yet his hands-down favorite work socks are Tommy John. He says they're the only dress socks he can find that don't fall down and are comfortable all day long. Tommy John does not have customers, they have fanatics, and I'm one of them. So I want you to try out Tommy John too. And now is the perfect time because it's Tommy John's anniversary month. So whether you're trying them for the very first time or a longtime fan, get 25% off site-wide right now at TommyJohn.com/newsworthy. Go to TommyJohn.com/newsworthy today for 25% off. TommyJohn.com/newsworthy. See site for details. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. And today we are talking about a new trend or challenge at workplaces. And it's keeping with the 420 theme. A lot more American employees are testing positive for marijuana when they have to get drug tested for work. One of the country's largest drug testing labs, Quest Diagnostics, says the percentage of Americans testing positive for drugs hit a 2-decade high last year. And that increase was mostly driven by positive marijuana tests. The thing is, though, Quest says fewer companies are actually testing their employees for THC at all. THC is the chemical in weed that gets you high. A lot of that has to do with changing state laws. Recreational use has become legal in 18 states now, and medical use is legal in 37. In fact, in some states, companies legally cannot factor a positive test into hiring decisions. But even elsewhere, Quest says fewer companies have taken THC into consideration. It also points to a recent shortage of workers that have prompted many places to loosen their requirements. And at least one staffing agency says it expects that trend to continue, but not necessarily for certain positions like those that involve heavy machinery. Thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine. And on this Work Wednesday, we want to remind you one more time that The Newsworthy is hiring right now. We're looking for an experienced news writer who can contribute to these daily episodes and more as we continue to grow. If you or someone you know is a great writer, has journalism experience, and would love to be part of our remote team, check out more details and how to apply at thenewsworthy.com/jobs. Okay, we'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.